SUSOIX, become the motor. Hey folks, and welcome to a SUSOIX Nordic skiing video. Here we are in Golden, Colorado at the pillars as they are known, and just below those pillars is a parking lot where a lot of people park their car and they ride their bike straight up this mountain. This mountain is called Lookout Mountain. It isn't small and it isn't large. It's just right. It's Goldilocks mountain. So here we are. We're going to double pole this mountain, and we're going to double pole it with skate ski roller skis, and that's what we're going to do. We're not going to use our legs, and we're just going to engage our double pole stroke, which is the foundation of all of your ski strokes. And folks, if you have not been paying much attention to cross-country skiing, and a lot of people don't pay much attention to it unless it's the Olympics, then they might casually watch it, but you're watching what Olympic skiers and World Cup skiers do about 70% of the year. So without roller skiing, you wouldn't have world champions and Olympic champions. And besides roller skiing being used to make the fastest skiers in the world, it's also a heck of a lot of fun, and it's a nice, great, big challenge. So if you're dealing with human propulsion and you like challenging things, and by the way, we always like to sort of imagine that things are challenging and not difficult. So when we begin to say, is it easy? Well, let me ask you something. Is there anything in life worth doing that is easy? If it's achievement-based or actually performance-based for your body. So if you could explain to me a load-bearing activity on the body that was easy to do and highly beneficial, I would love to know it. And certainly, I guess some people, all they can sustain is walking loads, and that's fine. And of course, walking is probably one of the least complicated and least challenging forms of forward propulsion. And that really depends on your state of affairs as a human being on this planet, right? So a lot of people might find walking an incredible challenge. And if we are healthy enough and blessed enough to be walking well, then it's not. But things are challenging. And they're a greater or lesser degree of load on the body. And the body adapts to load, folks. And you just saw a cyclist, the first one of many that we're going to see here. If you go to the bottom of this, or near the bottom of Mount Lookout, you're going to see a bronze sculpture of a cyclist. And that is there to pay tribute to everybody who dedicates and has desire to develop strength and persevere and summit this mountain. And all of Denver marches out, the March of the Penguins out 32nd Avenue, and they come straight to Golden and they ride their bicycle up. And of course, 1973, 74, that would have never been the case. Well, folks, skiing is load on the body, and it's exquisite load. It engages the core tremendously. It makes the body work in its entirety, and its strength, endurance, and balance. And you will always be rewarded by good health when you practice this sport. And unfortunately, in this country, we're very unaccustomed to forward human propulsion with the upper body. It's all lower body. Lower body's either running or cycling, running or cycling, running or cycling. But cross-country skiing is simply upside down cycling plus a little more. So in cycling, you're going to just engage primarily your glutes, your hams, your calves, your quads, and not much else. A little bit of gripping and pulling, but you're going to need to do a lot of core work. There's 2 more cyclists on this mountain, and the most common thing on earth. And cross-country skiing, once you begin to adapt to it, you will see that it pays huge rewards in fitness. And if you've already done the 10 or 12 or 15 years of tri or cycling, you're actually going to be rewarded with great big sensation of youthful feeling. So when you begin to do new sports that are challenging and do require dedication to learning technical strokes, boy, it's just going to make you feel like you're 12, 13 years old all over again. And when we begin any of these transport sports, you will feel very young. And to a certain extent, the degree to which you do or do not practice inline skating or ice skating or some sort of balanced sport after the age of 40 will increase your likelihood of being and feeling just a little bit older. So it's strength, endurance, and balance, and flexibility. Those are the 4 legs of the fitness table. And if you're missing one, then you're just not optimizing the load upon your body. So the body is very binary. There's no middle. Many people in this society love to be in this middle point where they just think, oh, well, yeah, I'll just be okay without applying load, or I'll be okay with applying just a little load. I'll just ride my bicycle. Well, bicycles and swimming are non-weight bearing sports, and they will decalcify your bones without load bearing. So you'll need to do some gym work, and you might as well just come out here and do a little double poling up this mountain, and just do some weightlifting work, because double poling up mountains, you're lifting your own weight straight up the mountain. There's a big tradition in many places in the country, in the world rather, where this isn't unusual. And not only is it not unusual for 28 and 16, 17-year-old people, but it's not unusual for 60-year-old people, for the entire village in northern Italy to come out and double pole mountains and classic ski straight up and participate in 45, 50-minute load times. I want you to really consider the load time, the total load time that this athlete is going to participate in today. So we're talking well under 60 minutes. And folks, I mean, Americans deal with 2 hour plus 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour marathons. Hey, I'm going to go run a marathon. And then the average American time is probably between 4:30 and 5 hours for marathons. And this is well below it, but people freak out because it's upper body load. Well, I'm here to tell you that the upper body can output far more load than you ever may have imagined. And the body adapts to load slowly. So the same as all these cyclists that you see here coming up this mountain have adapted to doing repetitions on this hill. None of them were coming up this mountain on day one. It's as simple as that. They all adapted slowly, and even if they take too much time off during an off season or for whatever reason, they're going to have to really come back and adapt slowly to climbing this mountain, and maybe gear reduction. But mostly, folks, we really are what we have been doing in the last 3 weeks to 3 months. So you might have won gold medals 5 years ago, but whatever you did 3 months ago is probably going to define what you're able to do right now at this very moment. So, folks, roller skiing is skiing. Whatever you have out the door is what you should wrap your mind around. For some odd little reason, all of small wheel asphalt sports jumped into the same family in this country especially, which is inline skating, skateboarding, scootering, and they all had the acceptable quality of falling down. So I inline skated, I skateboarded a lot as a child, and we would all fall down and you would lose skin. Sometimes there was fractures. Also look at road cycling. It's completely acceptable to have fractures, completely acceptable to lose skin. Even in downhill skiing, totally acceptable to have fractures to the point of needing to put in, steel pins and rods. And Lindsey Vonn does it all the time. She'll blow out her arm and she'll show back up her World Cup and she'll have 9 pins in her arm. No one says meow. But for some reason or another, And I suppose because snow skiing is such a beautiful activity, and it is without the loss of skin, but certainly it is with its own set of fractures and deaths in cross-country skiing, although a little less frequently. But falling down just is never an option for the roller ski, but it ought to be. And there shouldn't be much more than get back up. That's it. All the other sports, you fall down. What's the most important part of falling down? You get back up and you keep going. You teach a 5-year-old this, and certainly if you're racing bicycles or even if you're riding bicycles. If you ride road bikes on the road, I hate to tell you something, you're going to get hit by a car. You ride long enough, you're going to get hit by a car. It take 20, 25 years, but you're going to get hit by a car. So that needs to be acceptable. Life is dangerous when we're born, and sitting around doing nothing has a far more precarious negative impact on us than getting out there and doing something. And what's important, of course, in roller ski, as in anything that you make forward progress, even being in a car, is stopping. And stopping is all about anticipation. So you need to, how do you stop? How fast did you go? And why did you go that fast? So you just don't suddenly wake up out of a dream where you're doing 5 miles an hour and then you're doing 35 or 45 miles an hour. There's an in-between. Pay attention to the acceleration during your in-between moments. And simply put, don't ski above the level at which you can control your skis. And don't go to places where you don't know that you'll have good execution. And when you go someplace, do your loops and do them itty-bitty slow till you know every nook and cranny that you can get around. And also do a tremendous amount of work on uphills. Uphills are sensational. And there's a cell phone in my back pocket, and now I'm going to call an Uber and get myself right off of this mountain, because Golden is right at the bottom, and it's only 4.5 miles down there. Uber's just going to come pick me right up. So let's also speak a little bit about how this athlete ended up arriving here with this adaptation to this load. And this athlete actually began with cross-country Nordic movement approximately 8 years before this was filmed. And it wasn't with roller skiing. It was with a sport called spikeboarding. You all can see spikeboarding at spikeboarding.com. And spikeboarding is a simplified form of Nordic roller skiing on a skateboard with one shaft. So check that out. You can't cross your tips. You don't need boots. It's very casual, and it's exceedingly fun and very simple to commute with. And it can be used in suburban areas, in suburbs. You can get yourself through four-way intersections, and the braking is a lot less challenging than on roller skis. And so this development that you're seeing here, in this skiing athlete, comes directly from a simplified form of cross-country roller skiing, which is called spikeboarding, born in these United States, and using the exact same spike tip as are on the bottom of those ski poles. Now, when skiers take off their snow basket from winter, they replace it with a carbide spike tip. They call it a ferrule. Ferrule is a spike tip, and it's on the bottom of those ski poles, and it's biting into asphalt, and it's been doing that for the last 40 years, and they race them at World Cup. So there's nothing that will ever outperform a spike tip to assist in upper body Nordic skiing propulsion, whether you're on roller skis or whether you're spikeboarding and using a skateboard spike. A rubber donut, a rubber ding dong, a rubber whatever is never going to perform like a carbide spike tip, period, end sentence. So just remember that. And those carbide spike tips are all kept sharp with a diamond file that you're going to use to sharpen it about 2 or 3 hours. I like to sharpen it every time I go out, and in this case it's not an it, but it's a them. It's both of them in skiing, and you're going to keep them both nice and sharp. So coaches, field coaches, if you're looking at this, please imagine that Nordic skiing, double poling up big mountains, is very possible. Acclimate your field sport athletes to this, and of course to spikeboarding as well. They may be more inclined to spikeboard because it's a little more casual, and they could do that all over their neighborhoods. But Nordic skiing, Nordic cross-country skiing is a highly effective strength and conditioning development for all athletes. Absolutely. So if you can begin to inspire them to do this kind of activity, they are going to begin to win more games for you over and over and over again. And again, I can't overemphasize how similar the strength and conditioning developments are going to be between Nordic skiing and spikeboarding. About 5 or 6 months previous to this video, we came here and we did stand-up spike, which is the double poling little cousin stroke of cross-country skiing. In spikeboarding, stand-up spike and double poling are virtually identical. The hips are offset, and you'll be using one shaft instead of two. And so look up stand-up spike, look out mountain, and you will see this same summit with the same athlete performing a cross-country skiing inspired stroke called stand-up spike. And that sport and this one will, again, cross-train your field sport athletes like crazy. Now here comes another cyclist. It's going to come up and around, and as you notice, this isn't your high-performance cyclist. This is just an individual who's learned the queen of all transport sports, cycling, and they've learned performance cycling, which means that they can pedal at 90 RPMs up hills. And that language, if that hasn't been taught to you somewhere along the way, more often than not, American adults are never going to learn that language. So if you aren't taught Norwegian, you're not going to be going to a political science conference that they're giving in Norwegian, because you'll first need to learn the language. And this is the same for all the transport sports. So transport sports can strengthen condition for the field sports, and when you are done with your field sports, say after college or maybe even after being a professional at age 34, 35, in your toolbox of movement, language, vocabulary with which you speak to your body, you will already possess a transport sport. You won't have to sit around and learn it. It's no fun having to learn complicated languages. Movement, human movement, is a language with which you speak to your own body. So if you jump in a car and you go to the store, you're speaking to your language. You're speaking to your body, with that language. And that language would be sedentary. I'm going to get in a car, I'm not going to move much, and I'm going to drive 3 miles to go pick up some milk, right? Or if someone has already taught you performance cycling, you're going to say, hey, I'm going to get on a bicycle, I'm going to have a little cargo hold, and I'm going to go pick up some groceries, and I'm going to come back. And if there's hills in between, if you haven't been taught how to spin like the two cyclists behind the skier right now, you'll have no idea how to do it. It'll be inconvenient. You won't want to do it. So folks, Nordic skiing, stand-up paddling, and spikeboarding, cycling, scootering, switch-kicking skateboards, these are all transport sports. So if we learn them, then we can use them. And of course, the beautiful thing about spikeboarding and cross-country skiing is that they are going to really, really deliver. Please listen up here, field sport coaches in high school and middle school. These sports are going to deliver strength and conditioning for your field sport athletes during the off season like crazy. And once your students are all grown up and they're done with their field sport and they're getting married and they're getting ready to have a family, raise some kids, and they're too busy, they're not going to be left with just running and gym, because that's what we're left with. We go to school, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with field sports. I love them. They're tremendous. They're so much fun. Baseball, basketball, football, soccer, hockey, lacrosse. Played all of them. Had such a good time in high school. But as an adult, logistically, on a daily basis, you're not going to be accessing that human movement language on a daily basis. It's just not logical. It's not logical. You're not going to get yourself to work playing football Baseball is very, very low on the strength and conditioning spectrum. It's very high on the skill set. So to play baseball, you have to be incredibly and exquisitely skilled in the gaming of baseball. So in fielding and batting and pitching, and the strategy of knowing the game and positioning and timing of how to pull off double plays, and how to pull off fielding plays, and where to make the cross passes. None of that leads to daily access for you to remain healthy as an adult. And the fact is also that the games that we play in this country do not require that much athleticism, and we learned that in the 70s, and they said, hey, we need to begin to strengthen condition. All these people who are highly skilled at handling a puck, all these people highly skilled at dribbling a ball, these people who are incredibly skilled at playing the positions in football, if we make them stronger, they're going to win more games. Okay, terrific. I mean, the total elapsed time in a football game is virtually nothing. Basketball players in an entire game will run 3.5, 4 miles at the most, absolutely. And in baseball, forget about it. You just don't need much fitness at all, actually, comparatively speaking to what the body can output. Sure, baseball players are fitter than the average couch slug, but they don't need to be Tour de France athletes to play baseball. And of course, therein lies the issue, right, with cycling. You tell a high school coach, I'm going to give you a tremendous amount of cross training for your athletes with cycle racing, and the coach will say, well, what on earth are you going to give me? You say, well, I'm going to give you 180 beats per minute monsters who are going to rage for 30 minutes straight at those heart rate levels. And coach will say to you, well, he or she will say, I really don't need that in my athletes. And of course, that's where cross country skiing and spikeboarding really come in, and especially spikeboarding, because it is very casual, super accessible, and a lot less challenging than cross-country roller skiing. But both of the sports are going to deliver strength, endurance, and balance, elevated stamina, and hand-eye coordination for your athletes like crazy, and then they're going to know the sport when they're done. And this is a 54-year-old athlete that you're looking at, nothing really special, just your typical endurance bike racer that began at age 30 and really began to understand the principles of calorie in and calorie out and adaptation to load, and then had enough patience once they realized how beautiful the sport of Nordic skiing was and the sport of spikeboarding was, to really get comfortable descending speed. So all you cyclists and triathletes, well, you triathletes should really know. So you jump into water and you've got a stream, you've got a current running against you, you know exactly how slow the body's going to move. And running, we already know how slow that goes comparatively speaking to cycling. But all you pure cyclists, really, take a big chill pill and come down to these sports when you get to them. Don't worry about the speeds. Worry about the load times. That's what you should really worry about. And if you've ever been successful in adapting your lower body to big loads in cycling, well, I'm here to tell you you're going to be just as successful. And that's what we concentrated on when we got into Nordic ski sports, that slowly we would develop as much as we had in our lower body, in our upper body. And so clear across the country, we have mountains. We have nice little sedate mountains like this one, and we have much bigger ones like Whiteface, New York, Diablo Mountain, Mount Tamalpais, all over the country. And they're just waiting. They're just waiting to begin to King of Mountain race them in roller ski and in spikeboarding. And hopefully videos like this will begin to serve to call to arms and call to fun, really, to come out and to take on obstacles that are lifelong. So there's nothing wrong with obstacle races. I think they're tremendous. They're awesome. Just there's people out there who have been doing it for 15 years. I want to hear from them. I want to hear how many other people they do that with, and I want to hear that they can go out every weekend and go to their cafe and obstacle course race to the cafe and then back, and I call me nuts, but obstacle course racing comes from obstacle course fitness, and that's been going on for 70 years. So you need to send people to war. You need to send everybody to war. No one gets a pass. And if we got war and we need to get fit, well, you're going to go to an obstacle course because everybody is going to gain fitness. Not everyone's going to go through it that fast, but everyone is going to do it within 3 to 5 months. And if we all had to sit around and wait until everybody could learn to performance cycle, swim, run, spikeboard, ski, oh, I'm sorry, I can't go to the front because I haven't learned how to diagonal stride yet. That just wouldn't be the case. But folks have been a little hoodwinked into imagining that the obstacle is as basic as an obstacle course race. Well, there's things that are much longer and a little more challenging in duration, and that would be namely swimming, cycling, skiing, inline skating, spikeboarding, technical strokes that are going to last you your entire life. It's no different than, say, becoming an extraordinary artist, saxophonist, a lawyer, a doctor, or any skilled therapist, or even a great, grade school teacher. These things are challenges. They take time. They don't get pounded out in 3 months. So no disrespect to obstacle course racers. It's challenging, but let's face it. The creme de la creme of obstacle course, if they could be winning hardware in racing bikes or even MMA or in ski racing, that's what they'd be doing. Some might argue that no, they absolutely love it. They love to jump in ice cold streams and wallow through mud and climb ropes. All right, let's see exactly how many years these folks can do it. I've been at endurance athletics since I'm 30 and I'm 54, and I know exactly what it's going to feel like when you've been at something for 20 years. I'm still riding road bikes and it feels absolutely great. Rather even, I would say that it's highly addictive. So once you become very well versed in the transport sport languages, whichever one you have, and you begin to acquire them, they all take approximately 12 to 18 months of beginner, followed by anywhere between another 1 year to 3 years of intermediate, depending on your dedication and your skill level and your natural abilities. And more or less in year 5, pretty much just like becoming a doctor or a lawyer or any other professional, year 5, 6, and 7 is when you will begin to excel as a beginner. And of course, then you can double that time, get yourself to 15 years, and then you'll be extremely well versed in what it is that you're doing, as well as your body will become adapted. And then you won't look at these kinds of upper body loads and imagine that they're nuts. What's interesting, what I find incredibly interesting, is that the obstacle course racing has drawn many people out, and they've been doing incredible upper body loads, swinging from rings and climbing themselves up ropes. That's all extensive upper body load. But I suppose since the rings had been at the beach and also in the gymnasium and the schoolyards, and ropes had been as well, that it didn't seem that unusual, and nobody gasped. But it seems every time people look at double poling uphills or stand-up spike uphills, spikeboarding uphills, cross-country skiing uphills, and they sort of gasp a little. But again, we're talking of load times well under 2 hours, people. That is not that big a deal. So swimmers out there, make sure that you really, really understand that Nordic sport, Nordic cross-country ski sport, and spikeboarding is going to absolutely rip you for swimming. So I swam water polo, I swam competitively in high school, and I can't say that I swam that much more as an adult. And about 6 years into this development, I went out for a 2-mile swim. I hadn't swum in 17 years. And I said, okay, well, let's give this a shot. Let's see what this upper body development from these Nordic sports has done. And certainly Sunday, just tapped out 2 miles like it was absolutely nothing. I had the technical ability. I knew exactly where the elbows and the hands and all the placement was to be. I'd been taught swimming as a young person. So, but believe me, had I not had that upper body development, I doubt very much. I'm certain that I would have turned around 3/4 of a mile into the lake, or maybe even half a mile into the lake. Here we are taking this turn. This is probably the steepest part of the climb here, and what you want to do is make sure that you take little strokes and keep your momentum going. So there's a bell curve, and you want to stay on top of the power phase of that bell curve and not follow your stroke out and try to milk out as much as possible. You want to basically get yourself up going to speed and then not decelerate. So during those steep sections, you can really catch a peek there at how steep that was on these switchbacks, and just make those strokes short and sweet, and keeping those arms at 90 degrees, and trying to keep your ski tips in and parallel to your legs as much as possible, so you lose as little power as possible. The arms in this sport are very much like the chains on a bicycle, so you are not using your tricep and your bicep as much as your core, your lat, and your upper, your lower back, pardon me. And of course the legs are all transmitting everything down into the wheels, so they're getting a tremendous amount of work, but the power that's going to be generated is going to come out of that core, constantly core and lat. The little itty bitty muscles of triceps and those biceps, there's just not that much going on there, and there's not a lot of arm movement that happens in the stroke. As you can see, we're just keeping those arms at 90 degrees, transferring the power, and we're going loose and tight and loose and tight. Here's another one of those switchbacks. There's about 3 of them, one after another on this climb, after that little overlook that we had passed. And once you pass these, you pretty much have all your work done, and that's when you'll really start to begin to maybe think about accelerating a little bit. And of course, if you're a master athlete like this athlete over age 30, you're probably not going to really feel all that good, unless you got some sort of great warm-up, or maybe you even repeated half of this hill. The best way to actually summit in double pole and stand-up spike is to actually get a good nice 20-minute warm-up, and that's when you'll feel great. Otherwise, if you don't, you start at the bottom, you sort of feel like garbage till about halfway through, or at least till you get past the first couple of cruxes that are the most difficult. And here come the cyclists, and 15, 20, 30 years ago, you just wouldn't have seen guys like that all decked out and all that gear and floating up, and so many of them. And so now, just over time, it's just become the most normal kind of thing in the world. Well, human movement, you can't discriminate amongst it. It's all, it is what it is. So God gave you core, and God gave you arms and a back, and if you want to not see it wither, you want to develop it, well, get yourself into a gym and blow your brains out, or pick some transport sports that are going to engage that. Now look at these pictures. This is beautiful. We're seeing the range, the Rocky Mountain Range over to the left, and it's a very nice day today here, just before summer in May, and up we go in double pole skiing here at Lookout Mountain at Golden, Colorado. And what a lovely mountain it is to come out and do this on. Folks, you either are going to die wanting to ski, or you will learn how to ski. And of course, also skiing is skiing, as we mentioned before, whether you're on wheels or whether you're on snow. It's absolutely the same thing, especially if you don't ski. So if days go by, weeks go by, months go by, and you're not skiing, it ain't gonna matter whether you didn't ski on snow or you didn't ski on wheels. If you open your door, if you got snow, gosh darn it, ski it. If you got wheels, gosh darn, ski them. But ski hard, ski often, and engage your body with strength, endurance, and balance, and be very, very happy and proud when you learn to cross-country ski, that you, especially on wheels, that you are participating in the highest challenge of forward propulsion that there is. And in water, of course, that would be butterfly swimming. So learn those 2 strokes, and you will be the shine on the apple. And I say going forward because, of course, more than likely, or at least for me, I would say that the highest challenge of human propulsion is to C-cut on inline skates, probably harder than ice skates, left and right. So if you can C-cut at incredibly high rates of speed comfortably and cross over going backwards on skates, especially inline skates, on hard concrete that's really grippy, man, that is the hardest form of human propulsion. And I would say that if you have not learned that as a child, God bless you if you can do it as an adult. Because to date, I haven't been able to, but maybe because I haven't dedicated enough time, and that's really what it's all about. Below the challenge of cross-country roller skiing, of course, is spikeboarding. It's a heck of a lot less challenging and just more casual, a lot more casual. If you can find perfect roller skiing conditions, it can be a blast. If they're not perfect, it's a little less of a happy situation. These are very, very perfect conditions for roller skiing up hills, and so it's rather a good time, and it's a lovely way to engage your core. So we're getting up here close to the final top off and the summit, and again, this load time is well under 60 minutes, folks, and actually we are going to begin to load the body up now and begin to see how many weeks rest in between we need to continue to do these kinds of loads week in and week out, and actually see if we can start to stack them up one on top of the other, the same way as we used to cycle race. So we used to cycle race pretty darn hard Saturdays and Sundays, and of course we did stage racing, and that's stack loads right there. We did 5-day stage races, the longest stages we've ever done. And the body will adapt to those loads slowly, and of course you have to pay attention to your hydration and to your caloric intake as well. And as you can see, there's been no hydration intake. As long as you're under 1 hour, you can hydrate yourself, make sure you're fully loaded with electrolyte as well, and you can execute these loads under 90 minutes, on 90 minutes pushing it a little bit. But you definitely want to be good and hydrated before you do these guys. And here we are coming up toward the top. I think this might be it. And folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. I believe, is this the final one? No, it's not the last turn. Sorry about that, folks. We got another little turn to go here. Don't know this climb all that well just yet. So we'll stay in here with you. And notice how we're just staying steady and trying to stay on top of our speed, and we aren't in the greatest shape just yet, so we can't really lay it on all too thick for fear of explosion and detonation. And this isn't the kind of sport where you want to mess around with that. Actually, all of climbing, you tend to want to keep your speed in check and climb at your own speed. Doesn't matter who accelerates on you, you more than likely are going to have to climb at your own speed. Don't try to stay with things that you can't stay with, because if you do, you're just going to blow up, and then you're going to be going backwards really, really, really fast. So a lot of those slips are due in fact, hey, there's a little cyclist coming up, rolling up nice and easy. Most of those slips are due in fact because we are having to guide the camera bike. We're giving them a little bit of direction, so the athlete's having to mentally think a little bit about the camera bike and where he is and where the camera bike is. And even that amount of distraction will, when you get close to that paint, you're going to start maybe losing 1 or 2 spike ski pole strikes, vector line strikes to the rear. So there it is. There's the summit at the top. And folks, thanks for tuning in. We will see you at the next one. Ski hard and ski often, and ski Colorado. Guys, come to Lookout and Double Pole Denver. You're really going to enjoy it.